Do you see me as a villain or a simple joker? In truth, well, you'll never be able to conceive of the truth. Being an eldest means being one of the many strings that hold the world in place. Being an eldest means being such a vast and self-sufficient value that one's equals become strangers and one's inferiors are entirely insignificant. I am an eldest. Laughter, guile, transformation, that's what I am. Being what I am, I will let you feel a modicum of my loneliness. I will take away your pillar of strength. Good. You can play with words. Let us see if you can withstand the heat of my fire. What a refreshing feeling. I don't remember sensing it for a dozen millennia. But what's next? How will you end this story? Listen, I know it will end. Elegant and refined. The hero defeats a deity in battle. Impressive, it grants the victor power and immortality. The hero enters the chambers of the deity to become his champion and herald. Eternal, powerful, equally glorified both in the first world and in Valeria. Her kingdom healed from its wounds and flourished under the rule of the immortal champion. A beautiful ending, isn't it? And this legend is yours for the asking. Well, that is easy. I will return your kingdom to Galarian and strengthen its connection to the first world. In their homeland, the Fae can endlessly return to life. I will give to you the same gift. So long as you remain an enclave of the first world, death within its borders will never threaten you. As for the prize, I'm not offering you the position of a servant. Believe it or not, I am lonely. Divine power and immortality are a heavy burden. To accept it means losing all your friends and companions, but you can find allies and reliable assistance. This is what I'm looking for. A herald and a general with whom I can share eternity, and together we'll play 1,000 wonderful pranks and spread our power across the first world and further. Much further. So be it. This performance has run its course. It would be unwise to continue. Besides, I have no love of dying, returning to life. My fellow eldest are very good at playing especially intricate pranks at that exact moment. You were cursed by my will. By my will, you are now freed from the curse. May the shackles be broken, fetters be loosened. What's been stolen will be returned. What's been divided will be made whole again. I say farewell, and release your kingdom to the material plane. Go, be glad of your ordinary mortal life. Forget the gods of the first world. Now they no longer concern you.
Now that the eldest and other spiteful beings wouldn't be bothering us, the Queen returned to her subjects and celebrated the victory and the end of the kingdom's miseries with great fanfare. Everything gradually returned to normal, including our exciting lives. Not always peaceful, but also not troubled by invasions from another world. And little by little, our heroes and the common folk began to forget the sorrows of the past. The kingdom built by our heroine became an example for all its neighbors. What else would you expect? The Stolen Lands became the only place where the citizens sincerely toast the health of their ruler. The citizens lived trouble-free, and taxes made it to the treasury without losses. A powerful army guards the peace. Exploration of magic is on par. The temples are flooded with their congregations. And, most importantly, our cultural contributions are at least the equal of Absalom. The Stolen Lands are called the Land of Popular Rule, for in these lands, common people feel fully in control of their fates. Unfortunately, the total absence of authority allowed one of the richest regions of the kingdom to proclaim itself an independent republic, and retrieving those territories came at a rather high price for the Queen. Just half a year after the war with the First World, Gault moved its troops to the southern border of the kingdom. Their attack was rebuffed. The enemy state's infantry could do little against soldiers who were skilled with their swords and knew the military arts better than the alphabet. Since then, Gault hasn't risked crossing any borders again, fearing cruel retaliation for further insolence. Who'd have thought that some tiny barony founded in the Stolen Lands by an adventurer would become a real kingdom, playing a prominent part in world politics? Of course, not everyone likes the proactive stance of this young, bold state, but the fact of the matter is, they can't afford to ignore the Queen and her diplomats. The Queen became a true patron of fine crafts. Over time, the castle treasury filled with wonderful gifts from the best masters in the area. Armor, weapons, even magical artifacts, and the collection is still growing. The feud between Brevois North and South, which had been smoldering for ages, never sparked the fires of civil war. Through great effort, our Queen managed to bring both parties to the negotiating table. While Rostland didn't gain its independence, it did receive wide autonomy rights. Our relationships with both House Sertova and the Sword Lords are respectful, but they've become lukewarm. Because of us, neither side got everything they wanted. Amiri didn't remain leader of the Tiger Lords for long. Ruling was certainly not her calling. The years she spent with them were enough for them to regain their forces, though, and they recovered to be one of the best mercenary armies in the region again. They revere her as a great hero, even more than they once worshipped Armagh, and they respect our Queen, of course. She was a comrade in arms of the great Amiri, after all. Their tribe came to be loyal allies. Pitax almost returned to its former state, a joyful city filled with beers of dubious quality and deals of questionable legality. The old trade houses lost the crown, but they retrieved the property Iravetti had taken from them. Soon, Pitax became almost like a second capital in the kingdom, a thriving city through which rivers of money from across the region ran. Unfortunately, we get much less of this money than we would like. Governor Liachenza turned out to be helpless against widespread embezzlement. Maestro Bellavera gave the Academy of the Arts a second wind. Throwing out mediocre students and sycophants, she gathered within its walls talented visionaries, rebels, and freethinkers, those whose gifts felt cramped within the walls of more respectable institutions. She managed to do what Iravetti never could, namely, make the Academy truly famous, albeit scandalously so. So what if instead of odes to the Queen, the Academy releases sneering pamphlets and revolutionary leaflets? It only helps her reputation as a true patron of the arts. The dangerous man-eating trolls disappeared entirely from the forests and swamps of the Stolen Lands. Kobolds, though, being sneaky and clever, are still sometimes met by travelers and hunters who wander off the beaten track. Some even say the short reptiles still praise the great King Tartuk, but no one knows for certain. As soon as anyone approaches the kobolds, they forget their military honor and turn tail. After enduring so many storms and troubles, Varnhold eventually turned into a real city. Daring settlers decided to conquer the vast, wild expanses of Dunsword, and despite all odds, they succeeded. The modest colony that almost vanished at the hands of an ancient lich turned everything around to become a thriving city with lively river trading. Maegor Varn and his beloved, after distinguishing themselves in the battle for the kingdom, soon celebrated their wedding. Half the capital was invited, but they weren't ready to settle down and have already set off with another party of mercenaries. They've come to the aid of our kingdom on multiple occasions, but they're famous for their adventures in the most dangerous regions of Golarion, protecting peaceful towns from the undead and monsters. Agay, the Spriggan leader, learned a valuable lesson after surviving his meeting with the Queen and even regaining his tribe's home. Don't try to occupy seemingly empty settlements anymore. Instead, the Spriggans settled across Dunsword's wild borderlands and proclaimed it as their domain. Keeping the peace in a situation like that seems like the stuff of dreams, as evidenced by the occasional lost patrols and stolen cattle. Peace reigns in the caves beneath the old sycamore. The kobolds and mites continue to explore the depths and learn simple crafts from each other. Rumor has it, the first mite kobold wedding even happened not long ago. That said, settlers still aren't rushing to build new homes in the area. Some kind souls even put up warning signs along the roads. Beware, traveler. Steer clear of the old sycamore. Another inscription soon appeared over the sign, though. No keep going treasure ahead honest. Due to tumult on both sides of the border, Oleg's trading post gradually fell into desolation, regretfully leaving its walls, for which so much blood had been shed. Oleg and Svetlana left the backcountry that was so dear to their hearts and returned to the noise of the big city. Making sure her sister was safe, the former bandit Cressel traveled south. Her trail went cold somewhere in Absalom's docks. They say she changed her name again and now serves on a trade ship, hiding from old acquaintances. Keston Gares took a post as chief of the kingdom's guard. The former heir to a noble family never returned to Brevoy, severing all ties to his kin. However, a few years after the victory over the First World, a girl arrived from Brevoy and soon married Keston. They say Keston started smiling a lot more after that. Tasana, Lamashtu's priestess, didn't remain in the Queen's service for long. One night, she just disappeared from the castle and set off for the kingdom's borders, preaching to anyone who would listen and granting the needy the blessing of the Mother of Monsters. Having participated in Lamashtu's ritual, Olika gave birth to a strong and healthy baby. Sadly, the child grew into an unruly and violent adolescent. Having named a peer at just 10 years of age, the boy escaped to the Gnarl Marches, fleeing the rage of a mob that tore his mother to pieces instead. No one knows what happened to the lad, but legends of Lamashtu's child, who sometimes kills lost travelers and sometimes leads them to safety, are passed on by word of mouth throughout the area. The Fae took a fancy to the kingdom, feeling totally at home here. They often play various pranks, but they never do any serious harm. Falcos and Teresia managed to restore the magic forest. Once freed of the anger of the Scythe Tree, people returned to the abandoned village, and it became a haven of friendship between the Fae and ordinary people, just like old times. The lizard folk of the Longtail tribe returned to live on the shores of Candlemere, but they couldn't return to their ancient way of life. Living alongside people, the lizard folk adopted their behaviors, habits, and even religion. More and more of the Longtail tribe pray not to the spirits of their ancestors, but to Erastil or Gorum. They even began to forget their original language. I hope someone writes down their songs and legends before they all sink into oblivion. The goblins who put so much effort into preserving the Queen's lands obviously felt that gave them the right to do whatever they wanted in the kingdom. Travelers are careful to move in groups when they can, and any peasants who spot at least one particularly toothy stranger immediately raise the alarm. For if you see one goblin, there is likely a whole gang. A delegation of wizards from Absalom and other areas appeared in the kingdom one day, asking for permission to examine the lair of the Lich Farniras the Thoughtful. After completing their research, the wizards spent a long time thanking the Queen for freeing the world of that monster. In their opinion, he'd been capable of causing the end of the world, maybe even 2 worlds. The sweet teeth departed on a journey, hoping to see as many wonders as possible of this world and others. They keep sending us news from every corner of the map. Their bright painted wagon, drawn by a bull mastodon, crisscrosses Galarian, somehow appearing in the center of one incredible story after another. Evindra was glad to see the Lantern King's plans turn to dust. She spent some time helping restore the kingdom after the calamity, then returned home to the First World. They say the rebellious spirit of her cousin Nyrissa awoke within her as well. Evindra is said to recount our story to the Fae, encouraging them to question the power and might of the eldest. After the victory, the storyteller abandoned his affairs and began spending a lot of time alone in contemplation. He eventually bid farewell to the Queen and left her lands. But I suspect the inhabitants of Galarian haven't heard the last of this mysterious traveler, for his own story is hardly finished. Amiri remained a pariah to her native tribe, but she stayed close friends with Nylak, who ruled the Six Bears wisely and taught them to survive in the unfamiliar plains and cities. The restless barbarian would often travel for long stretches of time, but sooner or later she would always return to her old friends, bragging about new scars and recounting new feats, many of which Nylak immortalized in song. The Tiger Lords revered Amiri as a great hero, but she didn't stay chieftain for long. After all, she was much better at crushing skulls than giving orders. Valerie stayed to serve the Queen, and to this day, she continues to be a muse to many people, not just bards and admirers, but to warriors as well. Honest and resilient, Valerie is not just famous for her feats in battle, but also for her patience and kindness, which she says the Queen helped her discover within herself. Harren became famous, respected by dwarves throughout our kingdom as well as our neighbors, even as far as the 5 Kings Mountains. He's often been asked to help out or teach others, and he's never denied anyone, despite his grumbling. Some people even listen to his preaching. Lucky for us, there's a lot less howling about the end of the world now, and more wise words of moderation and humility. Not all of his disciples turned to Grotus, but everyone took away something useful from his teachings. Jaethal spent some time at the Queen's court, but she then left to do whatever it was her new goddess required. She must have become a great inquisitor for Pharasma, as no one would know the ways of the undead and Urgathoa's cultists, as well as a former undead cultist would. She was also seen in the company of Salim Godafar. It's unlikely the two became friends, being so different from one another, but it's a known fact that they worked together. Octavia didn't stay still for very long. Soon, she and Reg went to Numeria and started a huge slave rebellion there. They didn't manage to destroy the Technic League, but to this day, slaves speak their names with admiration, and slavers with terror. Over the course of their journey, the two grew as close as ever, leaving their quarrels and resentments behind. After returning from Numeria, Octavia settled in her mother's house and became the Queen's advisor and loyal companion. Rigangar left for Numeria with Octavia to start a slave rebellion. Over the journey, he really matured and learned to understand others, as well as how to control his anger. After he returned, he took a position in the Queen's court. Being both formidable and charming, he inspired fear in the hearts of some and lust in others. There are even some rumors that he almost talked Octavia into marrying him, and possibly even continuing the Della Fiorni line. After the war ended, Ekin hung his bow on the wall and traded the path of the ranger in for the craft of the carpenter. It may not be the most heroic ending to a tragic story like his, but as Torag is my witness, Ekin's happy with it, as is Alina, who became his wife and is bearing his child. Any baby born into this family will be pretty lucky, since the Queen herself still visits her old friend and will likely become the child's patron. Jubilost returned to the life of a traveling explorer, frequently visiting his favorite kingdom. He said so himself. His famous work studying the First World all opened with a dedication to his longtime companion, the Queen. Another name was also mentioned, 2Z, my guide and inspiration. Admirers would ask Jubilost many times about this mystery lady, but he would only chuckle, hitch his knapsack on his shoulder, and return to storm the vast expanses of the First World once again. As for Knock Knock, apologies, I mean Hero Knock Knock, he continued his questionably heroic efforts in the Stolen Lands. Despite whatever mess he fell into, no matter the danger he leapt into, he always seemed to scrape through just a little better off than before. Like true heroes, he simply never gave up, struggling on and meeting the challenge of each new day with a spirit that no mishap or misfortune could ever quell. The slightly inaccurate statue of him and the Queen still stands in the square to this day, the two figures side by side. I've always felt that, while the heights may be a bit off, let's say it accurately reflects the size and spirit of the goblin hero who'd been nurtured by the teachings of his queen. Kalika remained in the kingdom, though her desire to witness the world's wonders keeps driving her to take long journeys. But when she is home, she spends much of her spare time with her sister. They don't quarrel anymore, and have stopped dragging each other into trouble. Canera settled down in the capital and became a very busy entrepreneur. It seems as though every hour is planned, meeting with rich merchants or inventors whose work she's promoting. But on her way home, she never fails to stop at the market to personally buy some sweets for her sister. Between Canera's business sense and Kalika's charm, they founded and successfully run not one, but 3 organizations: a trading house, a shelter for tiefling children, and a school of magic devoted to Nethys. Beyond the many advisors and companions, there was always someone else near the Queen, a faithful true love, who devoted his worldly life to the one he cherished with all his heart. Wherever the Queen went, whatever trials fell upon her, Tristan was always near, ready to support and protect his chosen one. And no wonder, soon after the war ended, the Queen and Tristan took their wedding vows. And though Tristan never claimed any power over the kingdom, his common sense and kindness always played a part in the Queen's decisions. As for myself, the author of this book, Lindsay, who never chose a pretty nickname, I'm still here, inside my creation within the Capitol Library. I live just like I always dreamed, surrounded by people and books, and not a day goes by without someone turning my pages. My story inspired many others to take up the quill. My readers have written many fierce books, articles, and pamphlets, flinging truth in the faces of tyrants. What more could I dream of? I hope, oh honored reader, that this story offered you some daring ideas, or at least some entertainment. In any case, it's time to set the final period.